much for coming to this. I can imagine that it's going to be really hard to sit and listen to somebody talk at 4 o'clock after all of 48 hours of ridiculousness that has been happening here. So, but they've asked me to do a presentation, so that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to give you. Here's the title: Fun, 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 Rebellion MLP, the short bald guy, underneath this slide, shares his point of view. Just by way of introduction for this thing, I just want to say that, what I'm used to is sort of Q&As, like something conversational. That's something that I'm just more comfortable with, personally. But the Buck staff are very adamant. They really wanted a presentation, so I want to give you one. But I was wondering, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about, and I was having a hard time figuring that out. And then I saw this, and it gave me my cue. So if you go ahead and play the
video.
It's this video.
Play the vid! Play the vid! Play the vid! Play the vid!
No way!
Houston, we have a problem.
John, we need you.
Houston, we have a problem here.
I'm very sorry, we have not. This laptop has not got a QuickTime player. Give me 1 moment and I will find it.
Using the classic Windows 7 background.
All right, did anybody have any questions for me while we're waiting for this? Go.
On the over-rebels episode,
Yes.
we know that Andrew Francis did the voice of Applejack's cousin.
Thanks, Thomas.
Did the voice of Rick Strongheart.
Can we get this gentleman a microphone? Is that possible?
Right there.
There's a microphone.
There's a mic there.
From the top.
Yes.
We know that Andrew Francis did the voice of Braybird, Applejack's cousin. Do you know who did the voice of Little Strongheart? Little buffalo.
I don't offhand. Does anybody have?
Because I thought it was Andrea Lippman.
Huh?
I thought it was Andrea
It
Lippman.
might have been. I don't know offhand.
Because the voice seemed to be a little high.
Yeah. One thing is that once the script leaves the writer's hands, they're kind of usually moving on to another script. I don't attend the voice records. It would be great. I'd love to, but they're in Vancouver and I'm in Los Angeles, so I usually don't know.
So you're a Tara then?
Could very well have been. My first experience of the voices is usually when you guys experience it, watching it on television. So you have a better shot at knowing than I am sometimes.
Yeah, because I'll do a little revision, you see, while I'm watching it.
So sorry, I can't help you.
That's okay. Thanks anyway.
IMDb.
Anybody else have a question that I don't know the answer to? Yes.
Will the MLP characters grow older as the show progresses, or will they stay the same over the seasons?
Will there what?
Will the MLP characters grow older as the show progresses, or will they stay the same over the seasons, including the CMCs?
That's sort of a decision that's made beyond what generally what happens with the writer is that we just pitch story ideas and, sometimes we'll get a sense of what's happening for that particular season, and they'll say we're really looking for ideas that fit this, this, and this. But the decision of what's going to happen within a season, for example, we're going to age up the characters, is usually a decision that's made well beyond my pay grade, which is, by the people at Hasbro. It's usually really a corporate decision. And then the creatives say, okay, this is what we're going to write to. Because there's really two ways to answer that question in the sense that I think over time, and I think maybe you've already seen this, for example, the CMCs, as you mentioned, they're already dealing, I think it's fair to say that in the fourth season, the CMCs were maybe a little bit more mature, a little bit more rounded out than in earlier seasons. And so even though they're being drawn the same, they're not being drawn or animated as though they're any older. But thematically, the content of the episodes, we're seeing more dimensionality to their characters. So I think that's kind of happened organically. I don't believe that that's been a decision. It's really been more of how do we keep writing these characters in interesting ways, and sometimes that means looking at them more deeply or putting them in situations that maybe are a little more sophisticated than they might have been previously. So in that sense, there's an organic aging up, certainly with the CMCs. As far as whether they're going to start being drawn differently is really going to be a question of whether Hasbro wants to sell different looking toys. And that's not my decision.
Right, thank you.
Yes, are we good? Okay, so rewind a little bit. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to talk about. Wasn't sure. You know, I just wanted to just chat, answer questions. But then I saw this video and it inspired me, so let's let her rip.
Sir, now that I know not to sing in public, my family won't get targeted by drone strikes.
We're nothing, lass. This has been a public service announcement of the Office of Public Protection.
Hello. What's good? Yes, sir.
Units have spotted a magical flying down Princess Street. All flying units in the area respond.
Hey look, I think somebody's got a Game Boy.
It's over in truck here! Why do they always think that works? I mean, come on. That was City File, and up next is the news at 6.
Sir, can you step off the train and keep your hooves so we can see them?
Office of Public Protection.
Have you been hazed on your way to work? Do you have bad
Reports have been coming in of youths vandalizing property, causing noisy disturbances, and troubling law enforcement officials. The public is urged to keep a safe distance, make no effort to engage them, and most importantly, not to listen to...
Someone's having doubts, huh? We're just trying to make things interesting. You can try to write us off like that all you want. And at the end of the day, you're just a voice, pal. You don't know a damn thing.
Good evening. We interrupt your regularly scheduled mediocrity with some breaking news. Rumors of the death of Bud have been greatly exaggerated. I, Britannia, and my crack team of subversives, including Dave Polsky, Gian Barrow, Heather Breckle, and more, have been hard at work cultivating the lost arts of free and original thought away from the prying eyes of Big Brother. Come to Manchester Central on August the 22nd and we'll dance until the break of day. And on August the 23rd and 24th, partake of our buffet of the creative spectrum with delights of the visual, musical, and literary arts. If you're brave enough. Ponies! Pony freedom! Come all ye!
Is the person who animated that and put that together here right now? Because I haven't met that person. I want to just say great job. Lovely, lovely job. Right over here? Oh, you're getting them. Okay, they're on their way. We're giving an ovation. But what inspired me about watching this was first off the attitude of the whole thing. And just that, the fact that there's that kind of attitude associated with a show that's got pastel ponies and was made ostensibly for little girls. That's fascinating to me. That's like awesome to me. So, hence, fun, and rebellion. You know, they seem like they're two different things. So I'm really, you know, and the other thing I want to say about coming at this is that I think a lot of you here are interested in writing. Is that correct? Or how many people here, just by applause or hands, how many people here are into writing and have questions about that? Okay, so I want to definitely spend some of this time in Q&A about that and just offer you whatever I can around my knowledge, it's still a mystery to me. I've been doing this for a long time, and still writing is a mysterious process. So I can't give you any definitive answers, just my own experience. But one thing that I think is instructive about writing, I think there's a misunderstanding about writing in general. And that misunderstanding is that it's something that it's just the writer's opportunity to do a monologue to the world. And in my experience, that doesn't make for the most interesting writing, with some exceptions. The most interesting writing to me is a conversation. Sort of like either two characters having a conversation or a conversation between two different ideas, and just seeing how that conversation plays out. So, for example, what made me engage in this presentation was sort of a question. How do these two ideas, rebellion and fun, come together in this show? And I can't tell you I have a definitive answer, but I can share with you the answers that I've sort of come up with. But first off, I wanted to, let's play this next video, very short, but I think it's sort of like the question I want to answer, which is this. Oh, there we go. Here's the man who did the animation, ladies and gentlemen. Nicely done.
Hello, I wasn't expecting this at all.
Surprise! Nicely done, thank you.
No, I can't do that. Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, this is from the Brony documentary, and we'll come back to her when we can. But let's go to the next slide. Oh, you're going to try to play it? That's okay. Let's just go to the next slide. Okay, so I want to ask you, just to sort of round up these ideas, what makes the show, I just want to hear from people, what makes this show fun for you? What exemplifies it being fun, fun, fun? I want to hear from you. Examples of what's fun about the show, or what attracts you to the show about it being fun. Anybody?
The characters.
The characters. What about the characters?
Extreme personalities.
3D characters.
Three-dimensional characters.
The plot.
Yeah.
How much it's changed since the 80s.
Okay, very nice. How much it's changed since the 80s. Who else? Yes, back there. What's that? Make fluffy unicorns.
What?
Character development.
Ease of crossing it over with other things.
Sorry?
Ease to cross it over with other stuff.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not catching it, but yes? Comedy. Morals.
Pop culture references.
Pop culture references.
Some of the instruments. Like the chamber.
Oh, funny instruments.
Risk taker.
Risk taking.
Transferable experiences.
Sorry?
Transferable experiences.
Transferable experiences over here. Chemistry between the characters. Yes? Over here, anybody? Yes? Sorry? No. Oh, place of community inspired by creativity. Yes. Simplicity. Okay, great. Now that's beautiful. Now let's go to the next one. What makes it rebellious? All you Discord fans out there.
Rebellious.
Yes.
The season 4 finale.
Season 4 finale.
Apple Jewel. Apple Jewel.
Apple Jewel.
From Simple Ways. Season 2 finale.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. Season 2 finale. Yes. Sorry.
Female characters that aren't generic.
Female characters that aren't generic.
About promoting a toy line.
Sorry?
Challenges social norms.
Something about social norms? What's that? Challenges social norms. Yes, back there again.
You what?
Don't know what that. Did somebody hear that? I couldn't hear it. if I couldn't hear you. If you want to come closer, I maybe. But yes.
So Girly has a wide fan base appeal.
Wide fan base appeal. But yes.
Without an opposition to it, it wouldn't be rebellion. It's actually by accident.
Rebellion by accident.
Yeah, we just love the show, and other people hate it, and there you have the rebellion. It's not our fault.
Okay. And one more.
The over-the-top action.
Over-the-top action. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one. Okay. We're going to do. So this is going to be my attempt to answer this question about fun, and rebellion. Okay. And so.
His name has Wolfgang in it.
The way I'm going to frame this, because I want it to be a discussion, I don't really have necessarily the answers to this. But this guy, I want this to be here's the other thing that I want, a social norm that I want to challenge. That I want to challenge right here, today, right now. And I think it's this idea that we're all creators in this room. I happen to be a writer, happen to be writing for the show, but one of the things that's really beautiful about this show is that it's actually attracted a whole lot of other people who are interested in creating, and you guys create amongst yourselves. There's a conversation between this creative community and the creative community that actually produces the show that's on television, and by extension, the creative community that puts together the books. Jillian, right there. The creative community that puts together the comic books. Heather, over here. So there's all these crisscrossing creative communities that are kind of in conversation around this show because of the phenomenon that you guys have brought to it, just because the Hasbro decided to put it on the air. So this is one particular tiny sliver subset of that, which is Dave Polsky as one particular creative person in this big creative enterprise called putting on the My Little Pony show, talking to one particular audience, which happens to be you guys here right now. But I just want to dispel the notion that I'm a creator and you're not. Okay? That's just something we're going to pretend right now for the sake of having this conversation. But it's obviously not the case. I don't necessarily know a whole lot more about this mysterious enterprise called creation than you do. So I know I'm on a pedestal at the moment, but just treat that as a fiction that we're pretending right now. The fact is that we're all trying to figure this out. Are you with me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so here's a guy that I respect a lot. I'm gonna refer to a German guy, a French guy, and an English guy to sort of set the stage for this conversation. Okay?
They all walk into a bar.
They all walk into a bar. And there's a bar right there.
And there's a bar right there.
So he had something to say about art criticism. So this is another thing that I want to talk about, is that you can't have creation without an audience. It's sort of like, I'm going to say, if the tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, let's go with the idea that it didn't happen. You need an audience for creation to matter, at least among human beings, right? So, and an audience can be critical, right? An audience can say, I like that, I didn't like that, or that was good, that was bad, right? Being criticized is part of the creative process. I know it's a part that we as sensitive creative people hate a lot of the time, but creation can't exist without it, in my humble opinion. So, he had something to say about what is the proper way to criticize a piece of creation. That's the next slide. 3 questions in this order. 1, what is the artist trying to do? 2, was he or she successful doing it? And then 3, was it worth doing? And a lot of times when we're looking at a piece of work, a lot of, sort of a common error, according to Goethe, is that we go straight to the was it worth doing question, which is basically, did I like it or did I not like it? And what he's saying is that to evaluate something somebody's created, you really have to think about what they're trying to do and whether they did it well, and then say whether or not it was worth doing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit, give you a little window about what Dave Polsky, one sliver of the creative community, is trying to do as I best understand it, when I'm writing an episode. Okay, now I'm going to talk about this French guy, Albert Camus, who wrote a book called Rebellion. Remember we were talking about rebellion? He had a book called The Rebel. So I took a look at that book, and there's this one particular passage that I found really interesting. This is where my talk's going to get a little dense. Can you bear with me for the dense part? Yeah. All right, it's going to get a little dense, but hopefully it's going to be worthwhile on the other side, and then I promise we'll have a lot more talking, a lot more fun. All right, so he had some stuff to say about rebellion. He talked about moral contradictions. Remember this conversation thing I'm talking about, dealing with contradictory things. He says, as for moral contradictions, they too become soluble in the light of conciliatory value. Don't worry about that. Let's move to the next slide. This sentence blew me away, this first sentence. Virtue cannot separate itself from reality without becoming a principle of evil. Okay, and now what I really mean by evil is suckitude. I wanted to, can we play that Discord slide? The video we couldn't play before? Damn. Okay, can we flip to the last slide because I have it written down what she says. Very last slide. Very last slide. Yeah, there's not a way to skip to it? Okay, just go to the last slide. Go. Fast.
Okay. Curse you, PowerPoint.
Yeah, can you just click on the last one? Yeah, this is what she said. This is a fan, maybe one of you recognize her, I don't know, but who was in the, Bronies, the Unexpectedly blah 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 documentary. Anyway, this is what she said, and I loved it. She said, and she was addressed as Discord, she said, today's world of utter chaos needs actual messages of integrity and harmony, and it doesn't have to suck. Right? So I love that she said that. Yeah. So when Camus is talking about evil, I'm talking about suckitude. Like what makes something suck. So let's go back to what Camus had to say. Go. Okay, so back to the previous slide. Okay, so virtue cannot separate itself from reality without proof. So in other words, I think a lot of times children's shows just present virtue, like morality, like this is how you're supposed to behave, little boys, this is how you're supposed to behave, little girls, and don't necessarily engage with issues that feel real to us. That's what Camus, translated to Discord woman, would say that's what makes something kind of suck. That there has to be some connection to something real, that something means something to people, right? That it's not just trying to teach a kid something because this is how you be good, right? But how do you wrestle with something that's really happening that people can really relate to, that's what keeps it from suckland, all right? But he also says, skipping down, okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so moderation, which is, this is the irony that he's dealing with. That actually being moderate, staying in between the place between virtue and reality is where rebellion really happens. He says, it teaches us that at least one part of realism is necessary for every ethic. Pure and adulterated virtue is homicidal. So he's saying is going to make something suck if you're just trying to be good. If you just try to say this is how goodness happens. There has to be some complexity in there. At the same time, he's saying the other thing is necessary for all realism. Cynicism is homicidal. If you just deal just strictly with how reality is, just like here's what's real. Reality is really gritty and dark and people are horrible and blah 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 blah. If you're into that cynicism, he's saying that also creates suckitude. That you can't go the other way completely. So he's saying that rebellion really exists in this middle place where you're dealing with, I'm trying to say this is what's good in the world, and I'm also trying to deal with the way the world really is. And that creation is a conversation between how we wish things were, how we think should be, and how things really actually are. And so anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. At least that's what makes this show engaging for me, is because I feel like I have a bit of an opportunity to do that. So let's go on. Go, go, go. Keep going, skip all that. Okay, the third, so then Alfred North Whitehead, British guy, supposedly said the following. Next slide. The mark of mature intelligence is that we can hold in mind two opposing thoughts without undermining either one of them. Making a show fun and making a show rebellious. That it's possible to somehow hold those two places. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, so now number 2. Move on. Well, now this is when I throw it open to you guys. I just wanted to frame that. Philosophically speaking, that's what I feel like I have an opportunity to do on the show. But now I have questions for you. Who here identifies more with the rebellious part of the show?
Well, fun.
Who here more identifies with the fun part of the show?
I guess.
Okay, will you totally indulge me and move? Rebellion over here, fun over here. Get up.
God damn it! Yeah, guess we can see. Well, guess we can see here then.
Physics fun. That's the rebel.
Which side? I'm at the fun side. Barely. Fun there and rebel is there.
This is the fun side, yes? Yes. I've moved 2 chairs. Done well. But I have to stay with my camera. That's why I couldn't go any further. Sorry. Just go on. I'm pretty sure. It's okay now. Maybe we should. We're full.
All right. Okay, one thing that strikes me is how incredibly, it's almost 50-50. Do you see this?
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. And yet, we're all in the same room. You know, that sometimes there's, I go online, sometimes I see the conversations that happen in this community about the show, and that sometimes people are kind of more I loved it. And some other people are like, you know what I'm talking about? These two different voices online?
Yeah.
So sometimes it seems like it's a fight, right? But yet, look at this. We're all here. We're all together in the same space. This is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing that these two different attitudes can coexist so well.
We can?
In my opinion. Do you guys agree that you guys coexist pretty well?
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. So now, I kind of want to throw it open to questions. Just like it doesn't have to be about what I talked about. I just sort of wanted to create a frame around the conversation. So, but you guys can ask me anything. So this is kind of the Q&A part of it, and so you guys are now. I invite you to ask me questions related to Goethe's question number 2. Was he or she successful doing it? You know, you might have questions about episodes that I wrote that you might be like, I don't know about that. I don't know about question number 2 if you were very successful in doing that, or anything that you might have a grievance about an episode that I wrote. I'd be open to questions like that. And question number 3, was it worth doing? Are there episodes that you liked, episodes that you didn't? What didn't you? And then also just generally how to be a writer questions. I'm open to that too.
Which of your episodes are you most pleased with?
Which am I most pleased with? That's I have a few. I think I have the one I just love the most. I think is Too Many Pinkies. Too Many Pinkies. So, but I would say ones I'm proudest of, I'd say I'm proudest of Rarity Takes Manhattan. With For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, a close second.
Yeah.
And I know there was quite a bit of controversy around it, but there's a special place in my heart for Equestria Games as well. That Spike episode.
Yeah.
And if I had to, I don't want to totally rule out, and I also, another episode that there's some controversy about, but I just love it in terms of the exploration of Fluttershy, Keep Calm and Flutter On was also one of them.
In my opinion, season 4 was probably your best season for writing episodes. I'd like to ask if you had like any frame of mind or any particular ideas for the kind of stories you wanted to write for season 4 in particular.
Any particular what? I'm sorry.
Any particular like, ideas or frame of mind you went in for writing season 4 episodes?
Well, that's an excellent question. I wanted to challenge myself to sort of break out of the comedy box a little bit. I wanted to challenge myself to write somewhat more emotional stories and also maybe potentially darker stories. That I wanted to add dimensionality to the voice that I was bringing to the show. And I think I was starting to lean too heavily on being the comedy guy, being the slapstick guy, which I enjoyed. And like I said, I still love Too Many Pinkie Pies. But so that was the challenge I was bringing to myself. And also, I think what was also exciting was that we had more time. You know, season 3 was a very compressed schedule. It was a shorter, a smaller order of episodes. And so I think that I was able to be in a, you know, Megan and I have a certain working relationship where it made it possible to really dig into episodes and really take the time it takes to explore an episode from all the different angles and give it that dimensionality. It's hard to do that in a rush. Yeah.
And in my opinion, you succeeded very well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello. I just want to tell you the proper pronunciation of the German guy's name. It wasn't terribly wrong. It's Goethe.
Goethe.
Yes.
Thank you, Goethe. So that was more of a correction than a question. So the question was, how the hell could you screw that up so badly? Was that the question? So, Goethe. Okay, in America we really just all screw it up. Goethe. I hope that's close. Yes. Marvel, can we give a hand to Marvel? Just in general.
The second Daring Do episode,
yes,
where we meet her as a real person.
Yes.
What was the thinking behind that?
I'm so bad at the question again.
Question number 2.
I have a confession. I watched it. I disliked it, as many of our staff in our executive board room will tell you. I may have promised violence upon your person. and then we invited you as a guest. So, but I do actually want to know, what was the thinking behind making her a real character, where Ahuizotl actually existed in Equestria? Which threw up some interesting conundrums for me, because of course, how does a person like Ahuizotl control the sun with that item when Celestia controls the sun? And how did it affect in your mind the development of the characters that we see sort of grow over the seasons? Then you have someone like Rainbow Dash who likes to go out there and kick some butt.
Well, now,
who just stands aside in the fight and does nothing. I find that very odd.
Well, you're asking a bunch of different questions, which I can try to address individually. Number one, Ahuizotl has the pretense of controlling the sun. That doesn't mean that he controls the sun. Just because he has the claim and the delusion and the self that he can control the sun, doesn't mean that he can control the sun. Any more than any delusional person, the claims that they make are you know, there's nothing in how the episode plays out that he's delusional, but there is the potential there. But Celestia has it under control in the sense that she has Daring Do handling it. Now, if Celestia, now this is me all spinning like an explanation. The point, that I don't want any letters going to Hasbro saying, Polsky confirms that blah, 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 blah. That's not, I'm just saying, as a creator, here's how I can justify it. That if the relationship is as follows, that Aoi Zodal has this delusion, yet there is the shred of possibility that he can make stuff happen. There's the concern that he could make stuff happen, unleash this heat and so forth and so on. Celestia has it covered, probably, but the way she's covering it is a first line of defense by having Daring Do involved. Doesn't mean that she wouldn't back Daring Do up if something terrible happened. I'm simply saying that there's, a lot of times I want to come back to Goethe's questions. It's like, and I want to get back to how we criticize things. Like, a lot of times what happens, we watch something and we don't like it. And so number three, we answer question number 3 first. Question number 3 is, was it worth doing? Hell no, it wasn't worth doing. This violates my headcanon. So then, everything else in the analysis of the episode follows from that initial conclusion. I don't like it because it violates my headcanon, now let me poke holes in it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. It challenges everybody to raise their game. But what I am saying is that according to Goethe, that's not the way to approach it. The way to approach it is, how is what they're doing potentially right? And I may not like it in the end anyway, but how is it potentially right? And so this is how I'm saying this. So if we like it, we look for ways that it's right. If we don't like it, we look for ways that it's wrong. And so actually, so that's sort of the meta thing around this, which is to examine how we approach something. If we're automatically approaching it with a bias, if we're saying, I didn't like it, I want to justify my not liking it. That's automatically a biased response. Or I like it and I want to justify liking it. Automatically biased. It doesn't mean we can't come up with interesting questions and answers, but it's automatically biased. I think we kind of have to agree on that.
You sort of have to see the bias, ignore it, and look at both sides, and then come to an agreement.
And then, then you have a conversation that kind of sorts it out. So now, so that's kind of the meta answer. Now, in part of the individual question, so that's my response on Aoi Zodal. How is it right that we made that decision? And I think there is an explanation for how it's right. What were the other questions about that episode?
It was just, what was your thinking behind the, just because we saw a lot of character development with the main 6. And then they were sort of standing aside, and I was kind of thinking, I don't think Rainbow Dash should just stand aside to get involved and probably make a mess of it.
That scene, our justification is that they're in awe. They're still processing what's happening, that much like the audience, the actual audience of My Little Pony, the human audience, what the hell? She's real, she's not real, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to process what's happening, and they're not grasping it immediately, and that's why they don't jump in right away. And also, one other meta answer I want to have is the reason we did it is because 2 reasons. One, because it seemed fun. It seemed like a different, surprising thing to do. And that too, and for a creator, doing something different and surprising is actually really attractive. We're not looking to do something that services everything we already know about the show and fits within that is not that exciting to do. Now that doesn't mean we don't still try to conform to a canon, but if we sort of put our toe on the boundary line, that's actually kind of an exciting place to be as a creator. So I think we definitely towed the boundary line there. So one other thing, and I want to give everybody else a chance, but on why, so that's why we did it. It seemed fun, it seemed inventive, it seemed surprising, and we took a risk. Some people liked it, some people didn't, and that's the name of the game in creation when you're really doing it.
It's the rebellious side.
That's the rebellion and the fun together in one place.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Who is your favourite character to write for and why?
Well, I know this sounds like a cop-out, but I really don't have a favorite to write for. My favorite is an interesting premise which is a question that I don't necessarily know the immediate answer to. How is Rarity going, for example, in Rarity Takes Manhattan, where the premise is she goes into Manhattan and her generosity is challenged, is compromised. To me, that's an interesting question. I'm interested in how that character navigates that problem. So, but if I have admit to a bias, I'm a huge Pinkie Pie fan. I have a tremendous affection for Pinkie Pie. I have tremendous affection for Fluttershy. And I think that's where, if I had to pick a favorite among the kids, don't tell them, it would be those two. But as far as the writing goes, I'm down for writing anyone as long as the premise is interesting, as long as the question is an interesting question that we're exploring.
Usually I think he's my favorite one.
All right.
Is this thing on?
No.
All right. Season 4 had some ups and downs as I watched it. And probably one of the worst is, and I quote, Twilight Time. I mean, think about this. Why on earth would you want the Cutie Mark Crusaders to take Diamond and Silver to meet to meet Princess Twilight? I mean, after one bad apple and Flight to the Finish, you expect to take Diamond and Silver to meet Princess Twilight. You say no. No, like you're talking to a dog with pee on your rug. You say no. Why did you do it? Furthermore, why did you make Avalon forget that she could make potions? I mean, come on, she trained with Zipporah, for Christ's sake. What were you thinking?
All right, so that's 2 questions. Well, again, I'll be honest, I didn't list that as one of my favorite episodes. That said, I still think it's a good episode. And the challenge in answering some of these questions is that I'm not a big fan of having to defend my work. It's like, if people don't like it, they don't like it, and it's like, I think that, there's something in, I guess here's what I want to address. There's something in how you're asking that question that makes it difficult to answer. How you're asking that question. Remember what I was just saying about criticism and saying that people look at an episode and they don't like it, and then that's automatically creates a biased posture from how to analyze the episode because you're looking for things wrong with it. It's okay if you didn't like the episode. It really is okay. That I don't want to be in a position where I have to defend the episode against someone who didn't like it because I can't. You didn't like it, you didn't like it. I can't do anything about that. Entitled not to like it without me having to answer to you. So I'm going to decline answering your question. And the reason is because I feel like I'm being put in a position where I have to, the only way I can answer it is from a defensive posture. And that's not a creative posture. And I don't want to compromise my creative posture. So I'm sorry.
Is Equestria Girls 2 Rainbow Rocks showing in England? I do not want to resort to YouTube again.
Okay. I hope we can find other things that you like better.
I really like the goatee saying with you should find what you were trying to do before you or judge it upon that. And from your episode, they really have been about lore and legends from whom for whom the Sweetie Belle talks is, well, it's a saying from who? from whom the bell tolls. And I really like that about your episodes. How do you come up with such things, like the miracle and stuff like that?
So the question is, how do I come up with certain ideas for the episodes that I've worked on, for example, in For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, and your question is about the title specifically?
No, the legends and lore of
legends and lore, and like, for example, Luna's participation in that episode, and then question, and you were also asking about the miracle for Too Many Pinkie Pies, and you know, again, I come back to the fact that it's for example, in Too Many Pinkie Pies, we didn't think of the miracle first. We thought of, again, starting with an interesting question, which is, what if, okay, Pinkie Pie's a handful, what if Ponyville was full of 100 Pinkie Pies, 200 Pinkie Pies? What would that be like? To me, that's an interesting question. And so then then the work is to try to answer that question and make it as fun and potentially rebellious as possible. So, the miracle came up as like, well, we have to have a justification. How could she have access to magic that Twilight can't easily undo? What if she knows about a miracle, and what if she goes to the miracle and she knows the way to talk to the miracle that Twilight doesn't necessarily, and it's not necessarily in her magic books or whatever. And so, you know, that as we try to really give a real answer to that question, we come up with these ideas. And so, For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, again, the interesting question we started with was, what if one of the CMCs does something really wrong? And it's Luna that comes, and it's sort of what makes it extra interesting to me as a writer is the fact that they're both younger sisters, right? Yeah. So that seemed really interesting to explore. And so then we started thinking, well, how is this justified? How does this make sense? How can we make this as real as possible? Given that we're dealing with pastel ponies in a magical universe, how do we make this credible? Right? And so answering those questions, then the ideas come. So much of writing is about asking good questions, asking interesting questions that your intuition wants to answer. And then the intuition offers up the answers. And then you end up in conversation, oh, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. The other thing is that this is a very collaborative process, especially at the premise stage and the outline stage. I'm having conversations with Megan or whoever this story editor is, at the very least, if not in a story meeting when we're coming up with story ideas with a group of people. So, conversation's a big part of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. I was wondering, if you could write a story about a certain premise, any premise, what would you choose to write about? In NLP.
You mean that hasn't been done yet?
Yes.
Well, then I would be... it's an excellent question. It's a question I ask myself. It's also a question I'm not going to answer here, because then I can't do it.
Different question then.
Okay.
From the premises that were done in the show, would you have liked to take one over and done it completely different when it was done in the show itself?
Sorry again? Go ahead, ask the question.
If you would have to write an episode that was written already, but you did not write, would you have changed it?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question for me to answer right here on the spot. I don't have like an episode that I've seen and that like that I have a ready-baked answer of like, damn, Mitch Larson really screwed that up. I would have done I suppose if I examined it, there's definitely episodes, I'm sure that I would have written differently than other people. But there's something called a lateral move, which is basically, you made it different, you didn't necessarily make it worse, you didn't make it better, it's just different. I think I probably would have made some episodes different. Would have I made it, but I cannot claim they would have been better because they're unmade. It would be an empty claim. I have no way to, there's no way to test it. So, but yes, I'm sure, but I don't have a ready-baked thing for you. I would have to like sit down and watch it and pick it apart. I don't watch other writers' work and pick it apart in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hello, is this working? Yeah.
So I have one question for you, and this is all about your personal opinion on this certain thing. Michael, when you're basically doing your work on Friendship's Magic, writing an episode and so forth, and when you have these things running around your head, so my question is, do you include in your work mostly fun things, rebellious things, or a mix of both?
Well, ideally both. I mean, again, these terms fun, and rebellion, I kind of came up with for the purpose of this presentation. It's not something that I've been spending years. I've got my fun bulletin board and my rebellion bulletin board, and it's not like that at all. However, I think it's an accurate reflection of how I intuitively approach that for me, the fun part and the rebellion part of the show are very intermixed. What makes an episode fun for me to do is that it's a little bit on the edge, that it has a rebellious quality to it. For example, the Daring Do episode that some people hate. Like that, again, I didn't list that as one of my favorite episodes, I should be clear, but even so, it's a good example of there's a part of me that thinks this is going to be really fun to kind of do something that's a little rebellious, that sort of pushes the boundaries of what this world is, and yet is still justifiable. So that's a good pocket for me. For example, Too Many Pinkie Pies. This whole idea of cloning, it didn't exist in this world, so we created it for that episode. Because it seemed fun to do. So it had this rebellious, boundary-pushing, world-building, world-challenging quality to it that still felt like it was within bounds enough that everybody, not just me, but the story editors, the showrunner, whatever, Hasbro, Hub, all said, boom, let's go. So I like that. I like it when there's a mix. If an episode's too safe, like Twilight Time, this to me feels a little safe, isn't as exciting to me. I still like it. I still like that episode, but it's not my sweet spot.
Yeah, although I'm a big fan of Daring Do, I still didn't much like Daring Don episode when comparing to Read and Weep episode, but I'm still a fan of Daring Do, but all I'm saying is that I'm not much of a fan of Daring Don, even though it was a hard. I still put it on my list of an hard episode, which I was.
You got it.
Anyway, thank you, Dave.
Sure.
My question is more about the Equestria Games arc as a whole. I did like the Spike episode with the whole Equestria Games as the backdrop. Did you want to do more Equestria Games as the backdrop rather than just having it all wrapped up in that one episode? Just wondering.
Well, look, if it was a two-parter, if it was a season ender, I think we'd have seen a lot more of the games. We were kind of in a place where, given the constraint we were dealing with, 22 minutes, we kind of had to make a devil's choice, which was, do we want it to be it's a pretend Olympics, where the stakes will be very low. This is the irony, is that what kind of show are we writing, is the question we had to ask ourselves. And the truth is, it's a character show. It's not an action show. It's not a sports glory show. If we were doing maybe like a cliche boys show, it would have been all about the games and like who won and blah, blah, blah. What could have been a very good episode for another show. But for this show, it seemed like if we had to choose, and again, it was a devil's choice, we could have made a decent episode there. We wanted to do we felt like the surprising choice, and to some people, surprising in a loathsome way, was to make it a character-based episode. And I think people brought certain expectations to watching that episode, and some of those expectations were frustrated and disappointed. We didn't set out to frustrate and disappoint people, but we were inspired, and I say we because it wasn't a decision I made in solitude. It wasn't even a decision I made, it was just an idea I threw out that the decision was, let's do it. Is that the surprising and interesting thing would be to do something that frustrated those expectations, even though we would have liked to have satisfied all expectations. But given that we had 22 minutes, we realized we were going to have to frustrate some expectations, and we felt that episode was more true to what the show really is than doing something that was just a bunch of flying around circles and running races and blah, 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 and yay, we won, or boo, we lost. It's a very familiar episode. This was the more surprising, inventive choice we felt, and I'm glad we made it, personally.
When you're in the middle of when you're in the middle of writing the script for an episode, what would you say was the best way to deal with writer's block?
To deal with what?
Writer's block. You know.
Writer's block.
Yeah.
You know, again, I come back. You know, I think writer's block is a very legitimate question. I get asked this a lot. And I think the best way to deal with writer's block is to, if you start worrying about writer's block, guess what becomes bigger and more writer's block? Like, if you give reality to writer's block, it's just going to get more and more real. If you're experiencing writer's block, you're just, I hate the term writer's block, because it makes something real that isn't. You're just something making you're making it's almost like saying, I think the best way to deal with writer's block is to not focus on writer's block, but to focus on writing. And if you're having trouble putting stuff to a page, don't call that writer's block. Call that, how can I make myself more interested? Ask a question. Ask a question of like, what's interesting to me? What did I notice today? What movie do I like or TV show that I like that inspires me? Who do I want to be like? Ask a question. Get curious. If you have writer's block, what it drives you inward. If your question is, why do I have writer's block? What's wrong with me? Why am I stuck? Those questions take you inward. Ever more inward in trying to do a crime-solving detective study on why you have writer's block, and it usually leads nowhere. Better to ask a question that takes you out of yourself, but is a question motivated by your interests. What have I experienced? Who do I care about? What do I love? What do I hate? Ask yourselves those questions. Be curious about everything about you that isn't writer's block. That's the way to beat writer's block.
Right. You've been part of projects which, let's just say, aren't kid friendly. How do you feel when writing, say, a pony episode in comparison to, Scary Movie 2, which you were part of?
Thank you. That's a good question. I do get that. How do I feel about? Well, first off, I've evolved as a person. I've evolved as a writer. So I don't. Parody is still fun for me to do, but it's hard to answer that question in a simple way because there's so many things that are different. Scary Movie 2, I was part of. I was pitching ideas, but I didn't have my own episode, my own section I was writing. I was basically sort of feeding a bigger thing and, just kind of pitching ideas into a bigger process versus something that I had more control of. So that from a process point of view, it's kind of fun to have your own episode that you're writing, even though there's still collaboration involved. But in terms of tone, in terms of writing stuff for kids ostensibly versus it's kind of just apples and oranges. One of the things that I really enjoy that makes My Little Pony special for me is the ability to tell a certain kind of story where it's not. I don't know if this precisely answers your question, but this is kind of my stock answer. Two things happened between me writing Scary Movie 1. I was involved in the first Scary Movie as well. That's what led me involved in the second one. Two big things happened between those two things. One is that I became a father to more kids. My kids got older. I became more involved as a dad. And the second thing is September 11th happened. And when September 11th happened, it made me realize how much of my comedy up until that point South Park, Scary Movie 2, was about mocking things and tearing things down, which I still love. That's the rebellion thing, right? But I wanted to be part of something that built something up. I wanted to make a contribution in my writing somehow in some maybe small, tiny way that was building something up. And so several years later, I found myself working on My Little Pony, and sure enough, it became something. You guys are the evidence that obviously not just me, a lot of people, all the people involved in the show have been a catalyst for building something, and you guys have built it. This is a beautiful thing. And so it touches me to look out at this group of people and realize that my dream is to a certain degree coming true, that my writing is part of building something positive. And so that's something I didn't get. I hope that sort of answers your question.
Hello. 2 points. First off, I actually quite like Twilight Time, as I'm sure many brothers here did as well.
Twilight Time. Twilight Time.
Thank you.
All right, shush. And my question is, has there ever been a premise or a joke or a scene or anything you've written or come up with that didn't make it into the show but you really wish did?
You know, I have felt that, but it's not because, it's only because, again, the 22-minute thing. There are certain episodes that I wish could have been longer, that I wrote longer, where stuff got cut out. And it's not because they were necessarily golden, brilliant moments, but they helped. You know, sometimes people say, I don't understand the pacing of this episode. And that sometimes the way it was paced in the writing is different than how it paces when it shows on the air, because I don't know where the 22 minutes is going to stop and start necessarily. I've got a page limit that I work within, but even within that page limit, things vary, things play at different rates and so forth. And so the pacing sometimes I have a lot of responsibility for the pacing in terms of how I write it, but ultimately, the pacing is decided by the director, that based on what I've given him to work with. So I'm not trying to pass the buck, I'm simply saying that he's going to cut it in such a way that I might not have cut it. But he might, the directors are brilliant, by the way, and are fantastic, so I'm just simply saying that sometimes I wish we had 24 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. 4 minutes.
When you're writing an episode, for example, Rarity Takes Manhattan, and there's a song in it, do you have any control over how long it is or what the lyrics are at all?
I do, in the sense that I write something. I write lyrics and I propose like a style for the music. But generally it gets redone. In Over a Barrel, I didn't write the music, but the lyrics were the same. In Rarity Takes Manhattan, there were shreds of lyrics that were kept, but it was basically a total redo, and the style of the song was very different than what I proposed. And Daniel Ingram, you know, he knows a whole lot more of the music than I do. But I'll make a proposal, and he'll basically make, I think, decisions about what to do about the song generally are made out of my hands. Also, can I ask, when people ask a question, can you stay here for the answer? Because I feel like it helps me to be talking to the person who asked. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. I know this is quite possibly maybe a question that doesn't have an answer, or maybe not allowed to give out an answer, but I think a lot of the fandom enjoy the idea and like the character Star Swirl the Bearded. Maybe quite possibly because there's so little information about him that maybe it makes him mysterious and draws us into him. But what I want to know is, are there any plans to do maybe an episode about him, maybe explaining a little bit about his background, or like is that always going to stay just something that's not discussed or brought out in an episode?
Well, I can't. I don't know exactly which episode you're thinking of, but I haven't ever written Star Wars world is bearded in any of the episodes that I've done. So I can't speak to that. As far as, you can maybe ask that gentleman there. I don't know if you might know. As far as, I think it's on the table to explore that character further. Whether that's, I don't know to what degree that's been done for season 5. I don't know to what degree that's, I'm not in the Star Wars world of bearded conversation. Really at any beginning, middle, or end part of it. But I can say theoretically, I don't think I've ever heard, we are not going to explore that guy. No, it's on the table just like everything else.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Hey.
Hi.
My question is briefly, the internet's changed the relationship between writers and the audience in a way that's totally different. And I was wondering, as a writer yourself, the way you now have massive feedback from the audience directly and so forth, and can actually follow subversively within forums and so forth, how has the internet transformed your role as a writer in terms of that interplay between the audience and the writers that didn't exist before?
Well, I mean, so everybody heard the question about the internet is totally transforming the entertainment industry, period. For me, my own personal experience with it is really kind of on two levels. One is certainly being here. There wouldn't be any here for me to been to if it wasn't for the internet. There wouldn't be this, right? So that's a huge thing to start with. I mean, it's not like fandoms didn't exist prior to the internet. Certainly Star Trek, on and on you could go. But I'm not sure this particular fandom would exist because of the 4chan connection and so forth and so on. It kind of, right? I mean, it started out as this ironic thing and everybody was like, wait, but we really mean this. And like, it really was born out of the internet, no question. In fact, I wonder if this is the first, I'm sort of wondering, is this the first full-blown fandom that was conceived on the internet? I wonder. I hadn't really thought about that. But be that as it may, as far as me as an individual writer, I go online, I'm not going to lie, I check, I see what people say. I've learned to do it less. But what's been interesting is that I write comedy largely. I still identify myself primarily as a comedy writer. That's where that's what attracts me the most. But I've never been a stand-up comic. And there's something amazing about being a stand-up comic, or even an improv comic, where you get that immediate feedback from the audience, right? Well, the internet has changed that because my episode goes on, and guess what? I get immediate feedback. So that's new, and I gotta tell you, it's awesome. Even though it comes with negativity sometimes, and sometimes very justified negativity, sometimes very unjustified negativity. Either way, the whole experience of getting an immediate response, like an audience, to something that has aired that I had wrote a year ago, and all kinds of other people put their hands on, and so forth and so on, and then to just see it debut like a Broadway play, and get the audience reaction, it's fantastic. It's such a great learning tool for a writer. Because then you're not just writing to what your boss is like, or what's fashionable in the industry at the time. You're writing to what the fans care about, and that's really liberating. Because there's so many in the entertainment industry, there's so many weird games that start to happen where it's like, who knows what people like, who doesn't, blah, 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 and that's all getting stripped away. The fans get to speak about what they like, but you can't hide from that anymore. You can't make it up or spin it as easily as used to, and that's actually really liberating because then you're starting to deal with reality as opposed to everybody's interpretation of the reality and who speaks the loudest and who has the best connections. So I love it. I love it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Spontaneity.
Sorry?
How much of your work is a pure product of spontaneity?
How much of my work is a pure product of spontaneity? Hard to say. I mean, it's, anytime you get an idea, there's any really worthwhile idea, there's some spontaneity in it. whether it be like a piece of dialogue or, so there's always this, but it's often a product of a lot of reflection. Like I talked about, asking questions, picking things apart, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, aha, we could do this. Aha, say a miracle or whatever. Like that aha isn't a spontaneous experience. But it could be after a prolonged beating your head against the table process that doesn't feel spontaneous, but that actually feels grueling and discouraging. So, but it's a constant yin and yang there. So spontaneity is hopefully throughout. And because, again, we talked about it being a conversation. When people are writing as a monologue, think of writing as a monologue, then that's sometimes where spontaneity kind of gets lost. It's like the person has an agenda and they're just trying to write their agenda. And it's like, it's sort of like that first, this is what I want to tell the world, this is what I want the world to get, blah, 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 blah. And some of that stuff can be really good if you're really brilliant, but a lot of times spontaneity gets stripped out of it. So I'm hopeful that that the process that I'm more attracted to, this conversational process, creates those gaps where spontaneity can come in, even after a bunch of grueling reflection.
Something that really shows what comes to work. The next question was, have you ever wanted to write an episode without an ending, an answer or a lesson?
Have you ever wanted to write one with a lesson?
Well, no, without a lesson. Without a lesson.
I prefer to write them. I mean, my natural instinct is to have the lesson not be spoken, but be implicit. That's my stylistic preference. So you'll notice that, like at the end of Whom the Sweetie Belle Tolls, there really isn't a specific lesson vocalized, but you see what happens between the characters, between Sweetie Belle and Verity at the end. Stylistically, I prefer that. However, I think there's something really cool about having to tell a lesson, because it makes you really have to think about what that lesson is, think carefully about it and precisely about it. I think that's healthy for good writing. Thank you. Sure.
Hi. My question is simple. It's how exactly did you get into the writing business?
How did I get into the writing business? It's kind of a weird story. Let me answer that. How are we doing on time? I see there's a lot of people left who want to go. We have 15 minutes, okay. So the short version is I actually had a very charmed entrance into the business.
Yeah, workshop too.
I did a lot of stuff. In college, I was kind of well known for comedy. I was involved in a comedy troupe. I started an improvisational comedy troupe that's still going there. Co-started it with a friend of mine. And then I left college and started working for an investment bank in New York City, and but I was taking acting classes on the side and writing classes, but my focus on writing was poetry.
That sounds like.
And then I got burnt out on that, burnt out on investment banking, and then I got to being a social worker, and then we moved to Maine, and then I got burnt out on social working, and then I was doing telephone sales, but I kept writing poetry, and I got published, But the comedy thing had kind of dropped away. Then one of my college roommate for 3 years had broken into the business during this time. And then he called me from Los Angeles and said, how'd you like to write on a TV show that I got the head writing job on? If you submit your stuff, if the producers like it, I could maybe get you to freelance from 3,100 miles away. And that show was singled out. I don't know if you remember this game show that launched Jenny McCarthy's career, and Chris Hardwick was on it. Anyway, it was on MTV. And I ended up freelancing for that show, and they liked it, and they gave me a job, and I moved out, and then I moved my wife and kid out, we sold the house, and blah, blah, blah. So it was a very unusual entrance to the business. But that got me started, but then I kind of had to make it work. My wife and kid came out, we sold the house, it really had to work beyond that one show. So.
Hello. So in season 4 you wrote The Return of the Interview, an episode with Variety in it since the last one was released 2 years ago. The Return of Princess Luna, one focused on Princess Twilight, and the conclusion of the Equestria Games. These were very heavy episodes that the fandom was looking forward to. Did you ever feel any pressure coming from the fandom or like anyone in general when you were writing them?
Any pressure? What was the last part? Any pressure?
Any pressure from the fandom or from anyone in particular, because these episodes were a very big deal before they were released.
Well, I certainly felt a responsibility, that to do them well, and but I kind of I don't know why, but as a writer, I kind of like challenges. I mean, I sort of attracted to the more challenging the idea is, the more attractive it is to me. The higher the stakes with the fandom, the more attractive it is to me. And then I take my lumps, for how it goes. But that gets my creative juices going. I kind of embrace it.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was fine the cook. He was fine.
Oh, thank you very much.
So stupid yet so funny.
Thank you.
Again, heading back to you work on Scary Movie in South Park, do you still have that feeling that you want to go on and do more adult shows? You don't want to stay with MLB the entire time?
I do. I mean, there's something that really attracts me about comedy that speaks to an adult audience. That said, a lot of, it would have to be an opportunity. I still have to have the opportunity to do the kind of storytelling that I like to do, which is somewhat affirming, I think. And it's challenging. It's challenging to do something that's both affirming and satirical. So I don't want to. So yes, the short answer is yes, that's appealing to me. But then it has to be the right. It has to fit that affirming part of me that I've cultivated all these years since that time. And so that's a journey. I'm just on another journey, finding where the right places are for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, Dave.
Hi.
I'd like to ask how you feel your writing has changed over the 4 years that you've been working on the show.
What? I'm sorry?
How you feel your writing has changed over the 4 years you've done the show.
Since I've been on the show, how my writing has changed. Well, kind of a little bit like I said I think I've allowed myself to tell more complex stories, more emotional stories, I think I've grown in my capacity to do that, that's been very satisfying. And so, because comedy is still the main thing that's attractive to me, but it's given a lot of, I feel like I'm growing in my ability to still tell a story that has comedic elements, but has action also, has heart also, and where it also fits together, and it found it. So that's the main thing. This show's given me an great opportunity to develop my ability in that.
First off, Mr. Polsky, I'd like to say that I and many other people around me would agree you are one of the funniest writers on the show, if not the funniest.
Thank you. Thank you.
From that, I would like to ask that when you write your scripts, do you have a specific way you communicate your comedic timing through visual and verbal gags?
A specific way I
communicate timing, because time is the most important part of the job.
Timing and the last part?
Comedic timing.
Yes, a specific way I develop the comedic timing.
In your scripts.
In the scripts. Well, it's not something, I guess I probably do, it's not something that it's really a feel thing. It's kind of, I don't have a great, I've talked a lot about asking questions and analysis and being, coming up with ideas and so forth. But when it actually gets down to where the rubber really hits the road and you're writing dialogue, developing, comedic action sequences, at that point, kind of instinct sort of has to take over for me. That I don't have like a method. Like at that point, it's just like, does this work? Does this thing feel like it works? It's sort of like a joke. The way you know a joke works is by testing it out. And then I saw maybe say things to myself or say things to myself in my head or picture it, visualize what the sequence as I'm writing it would look like on a TV screen once it was all animated, and then kind of saying, does this look right the way I imagine it appearing on TV? Does this sound right the way I imagine it coming out of people's mouths? So I guess that would be my method, is that I kind of try to sort of conjure the finished product in my head and then watch it as an audience or listen to it as an audience, kind of pretend, and then say this is, and if it feels right, great. If not, then I change it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
you, Miura. A great fan of your all the episodes that you've written, developed. So you've got some of the episodes like Too Many Pink Pies that I really love. But for the more controversial ones, the early ones, with Feeling Pinky Keen, don't want to be aggressive. So what was the artist trying to do? Sometimes I can think about it, but it's one that sort of, I want to find out what the aim of the episode was.
Kind of what?
The aim for Feeling Pinky Keen?
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes that gets a little flag or cause a bit of diversion sometimes within the fan community.
Yes, Feeling Pinky Keen. Well, first off, remember, that was a show that was written before the show had ever aired. So we didn't really know that we were, that said, the aim was, Lauren Faust had this wonderful idea of Pinky Sense. The question was how to write a story where Pinky Sense possibly made sense. And so my intention was to give that idea, have it play out as a narrative in some way, because that was kind of my job. I can tell you the intention was not to do anything about religion. That was not the intention at all. However, it was an exploration of faith. And now, I would say that, and I don't mean faith in any religious sense. I mean the kind of faith where you walk into this building having faith that's not going to fall down on you. Right? We exercise faith all the time. So much so that we're not even aware of it. I have faith that I'm going to be up here and none of you are going to shoot me. That may be a misguided faith. But it's a faith nonetheless. Otherwise, I wouldn't be up here. Right? Because I'm not, this convention isn't worth that for me. So faith is always operational. It's not an inherently religious thing. It's been appropriated by religion for various reasons, and we can debate that till the end of time. But